There are moments in a courtroom that pass like clockwork, routine, rehearsed, expected. And then there are moments like this. A music mogul facing multiple lawsuits, a former partner refusing to stay silent, and a pop star, once a protege, publicly switching sides. This is the story of what happened when Justin Bieber broke his silence and Diddy broke down. Before we begin, if you believe in truth over power and stories that expose what's hidden behind the fame, this is your place. Subscribe to this channel, because behind every headline, there's a human story waiting to be told. Tap the bell so you never miss when the truth finally speaks. It was the moment no one expected, least of all Sean "Diddy" Combs. Once hailed as one of hip-hop's most powerful moguls, Diddy sat stiffly in the courtroom, his face unreadable as the proceedings dragged on. Cameras were banned inside, but the tension could be felt through every whisper from the press bench, every sharpened glance exchanged across the aisle. His name had been dragged through headlines for months. Civil lawsuits, allegations, a reputation in free fall. But nothing cut through the noise like the voice of Justin Bieber. The courtroom was already buzzing from the week's revelations. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former longtime partner, had returned with new testimony, and this time she wasn't alone. After years of silence, after an out-of-court settlement that was supposed to close that chapter forever, Cassie came forward again. She spoke not just for herself, but for others. Her voice was steady, raw, the kind of voice that had nothing left to lose. What people didn't expect was what came next. A public statement posted by Justin Bieber, one of the world's most famous pop stars and someone once closely linked to Diddy's inner circle. The statement wasn't cryptic, nor carefully coded like many celebrity responses. It was plain, human, and impossible to ignore. "I stand with Cassie," it read. "What she shared, it's brave, it's heartbreaking, and it needs to be heard." The post went viral in under 2 minutes. Inside the courtroom, Diddy's legal team scrambled. Phones buzzed on silent. Reporters slipped out, whispering urgently into earpieces. And across the room, Cassie, for the first time that day, allowed herself to exhale. Because this wasn't just about one woman's word against a powerful man. Not anymore. For years, Justin had kept his distance from the drama. He'd once called Diddy a mentor, a brother, someone who gave him a shot when others hesitated. But over time, things had changed. Behind the scenes, whispers had started. And for a young man who had grown up under the spotlight, with his own demons and traumas, maybe Justin saw something in Cassie's story that hit too close to home. Diddy's shoulders, once squared, began to cave ever so slightly as the judge recessed the court for lunch. He didn't speak. He didn't look up. Witnesses say he sat there for a long time, hands folded, head bowed, like a man finally reckoning with more than just a lawsuit. Outside the courthouse, a different kind of trial was unfolding, one of public opinion. News vans lined the street. Protesters and supporters gathered in separate clusters. The hashtags #, Justice for Cassie, and #, Survivors Deserve Support, trended worldwide. But it was Bieber's post that broke the internet. Not just because of his fame, but because of what it symbolized. He wasn't just another celebrity weighing in. He was someone from Diddy's circle, a little brother figure who had once been ushered into industry parties, studio sessions, and private jets by the man now sitting in that courtroom. Justin's decision to speak out wasn't just bold, it was personal. Back inside, the courtroom returned from recess. Diddy had composed himself outwardly, but something in his eyes had shifted. The confidence, The bravado he was once known for was dimming. His legal team looked tense, exchanging glances that spoke of urgent damage control. Then came the next surprise. A subpoena had been issued, calling on past associates to testify, including those who had remained silent for years. One name was read aloud, and a murmur spread through the gallery. No one expected her to show up, but when she did, the entire room fell still. A former backup dancer, anonymous until that very moment. She stepped up with quiet composure and took the stand. What she said echoed Cassie's claims. Coercion, manipulation, abuse masked as mentorship. Her testimony wasn't theatrical. It didn't need to be. It was calm, factual, and devastating. By now, Diddy was no longer glancing toward the gallery. He stared at the table before him, barely blinking. His lawyers objected repeatedly, but the judge, alert, unmoved, allowed the line of questioning. Word began to spread online that the walls were closing in. Meanwhile, in the background of it all, Justin's post wasn't fading. It was growing. Selena Gomez reposted it. Billie Eilish added a broken heart emoji and the word bravery. Even Usher, who had long-standing ties with Diddy, made a quiet move. He unfollowed him on social media. The industry was watching, and it was beginning to shift. That night, Justin expanded on his post during a surprise appearance at a youth charity gala. "I was young when I entered this business," he said to the audience. "There were people who said they were protecting me, but really, they were protecting power." Cassie's story reminded me that silence helps no one, that if you have a platform, you better use it for truth. There was no drama in his voice, no desire for clout. Just the weary honesty of a man who knew what it felt like to be cornered in a world built on image. When reporters asked Diddy's camp for comment, there was none. Because the next morning, Diddy, once a titan of entertainment, was seen leaving his hotel alone. No entourage, no designer sunglasses, just a hood over his head, hands buried deep in his pockets, the weight of 1,000 headlines hanging off his shoulders. The trial resumed on a rainy Thursday morning, but outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was electric. More people showed up this time, some holding signs, others just standing silently, watching. The crowd had grown beyond Cassie's fans or media followers, survivors, activists. Young people who said they had never cared about court cases until now. It wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about what he represented, about the cost of silence, and what happens when someone finally speaks up. Then, another, and another. Inside the courtroom, Cassie sat quietly beside her attorney. She didn't cry. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired, but resolved. Like a woman who had carried a story for too long and was finally setting it down. That day, a forensic psychologist took the stand. Her job was to break down behavior, emotional patterns, trauma responses, coercion techniques. She didn't name Diddy directly, but she didn't need to. She explained how emotional control often precedes physical abuse, how victims sometimes remain in high-profile relationships because leaving isn't just hard, it's dangerous. The room was quiet. Even the judge leaned forward. Then the court heard excerpts from old deposition tapes, recordings made years ago during past legal battles, long before this case ever reached trial. In one clip, Diddy spoke with swagger, confident, almost dismissive. In another, he laughed off allegations, calling them jealousy and industry drama. But the world had changed since then, and so had the way people listened. Midway through the session, Diddy asked to step out. He wasn't feeling well. The judge allowed it, but warned there'd be no more delays. Witnesses later described him stepping into the hallway, pacing, clutching the bridge of his nose. A man unrecognizable from the music mogul who once commanded award shows and private yachts. In the press room, news broke that another lawsuit was now pending, this time from a male artist who claimed Diddy had exploited his career in similar ways. No names were confirmed yet, but social media was already ablaze. Speculation, receipts, people digging through old interviews, pulling clips, reinterpreting every moment with fresh eyes. Meanwhile, Justin Bieber released a follow-up video. "I've been sitting with a lot of guilt," he said, seated in a low-lit room. "Guilt that I saw things and didn't always ask questions. Guilt that I let people make me believe that was normal. Cassie gave me the courage to stop pretending." He didn't name names, but he didn't have to. Because hours later, a former producer came forward, then a tour manager, then a stylist who had worked with both Cassie and Diddy during the early 2000s. It was like dominoes falling, slow at first, then all at once. As the week came to a close, the courtroom began to feel less like a stage and more like a reckoning. Every detail mattered now. Every look, every pause in testimony, every carefully worded cross-examination. The air was heavy with things unsaid but understood. And while Diddy's legal team fought to discredit, to dismiss, to delay, something was unraveling behind the scenes. Sources close to his inner circle began leaking anonymous statements to the press. One simply read, "We all knew. We just didn't want to lose everything." That line alone set fire to the comment sections, because it wasn't about guilt or innocence anymore. It was about complicity, power, image, silence. By Friday, news broke that a top executive at Diddy's record label had stepped down to protect the integrity of the brand. Several major sponsors paused ongoing partnerships. Artists who had once shared stages with him quietly removed collaborative songs from playlists. And in the middle of it all was Cassie, a woman who once stood in his shadow, now standing in the light, not because she wanted fame or revenge, but because the weight of truth had simply become too heavy to carry alone. Then came the moment that shook even the most hardened observers. Diddy returned to court that afternoon, late. He walked in without his usual security. No sunglasses, no swagger. His eyes were red, his posture slumped. And for the first time in the entire trial, he spoke directly to the court. "Never meant to hurt her," he said, voice low. The room froze. "I was young, reckless, and I thought I was untouchable." He wasn't reading from notes. There were no lawyers whispering in his ear. Just Diddy, one of the most powerful names in music, finally, painfully, human. "I'm not here to ask for sympathy," he continued. "But if silence protected me, then maybe silence is what I need to sit in now." And with that, he stepped down. Not from the witness box, but from the empire he'd built. Word spread fast. Diddy had agreed to settle ongoing lawsuits, step away from his businesses indefinitely, and allow third-party investigations into past misconduct at his companies. Justin Bieber reposted Cassie's original testimony with only one caption: "Healing starts with truth." And maybe that's what this story was always about, not justice in the traditional sense, not headlines, not hashtags, but the quiet, powerful unraveling of an old system by the voices that were never supposed to be heard.